The massive hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 alien species gathered for the emergency council meeting. Admiral Crix Vorthik stood at the center podium, his scaled green skin gleaming under the artificial lights. His 4 arms gestured confidently as he addressed the assembled crowd, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Fellow council members," Vorthik began, his translator device converting his harsh Zilani language into the common galactic tongue. "Today marks another victory for order in our galaxy. The Zilani Confederation has successfully brought 3 more primitive worlds under our protection." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They all knew what Zilani protection really meant. It meant slavery, resource extraction, and the complete destruction of any species that dared to resist. The Confederation had been expanding aggressively for 300 years, and no one had been able to stop them. Vorthik's yellow eyes scanned the room, noting the fear in his audience. He enjoyed this feeling of power. The Confederation fleet numbered over 1,000 ships, each one equipped with the most advanced weapons and shields in known space. Their military technology was centuries ahead of most other species, and their tactics had never failed. "These humans," Vorthik continued with a dismissive wave of one of his clawed hands, "are nothing more than another primitive species that requires guidance. They have barely learned to travel between stars, and their weapons are crude metal projectiles. Our intelligence reports show they pose no threat to civilized species." Meanwhile, millions of light years away, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the U.E.'s Defiance. The human destroyer was sleek and powerful, but it was just one ship against an entire alien empire. Jake was 35 years old, with short brown hair and steady blue eyes that had seen too much combat. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years, working his way up from a young lieutenant to ship captain. The bridge of the Defiance was quiet, except for the steady hum of the engines. Commander Lisa Parker stood at the tactical station, studying the long-range sensors. She was Jake's second-in-command, a brilliant officer with red hair and green eyes, who had saved the ship from destruction more times than anyone could count. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice tight with concern, "we're receiving a transmission from the outer colonies. It's very weak, and it's been traveling for weeks." Jake turned toward her, already knowing this wouldn't be good news. The outer colonies were humanity's newest settlements, established on the frontier worlds beyond Earth's main defensive grid. They were brave pioneers who had volunteered to build new homes on distant planets, but they were also vulnerable and isolated. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a middle-aged man in civilian clothes. His face was dirty and streaked with tears, and behind him smoke rose from burning buildings. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but the man's words were clear enough. "This is Governor Paul Roberts of New Denver Colony," man said, his voice shaking with fear and exhaustion. "We are under attack by alien forces. They came without warning 3 days ago. Hundreds of ships, more than we've ever seen. They're taking prisoners, loading our people onto transport ships. We don't know where they're being taken." The image cut out for several seconds, then returned with more static. Roberts continued, speaking, his voice becoming more desperate. "Haven's Rest and Liberty Station are also under attack. We sent out distress calls, but we're too far from Earth. By the time this message reaches anyone, it will probably be too late. They're demanding complete surrender. They want us to give up our weapons, our ships, everything. They say they're bringing us into something called the Zilani Confederation." Jake felt his jaw tighten as he listened. The outer colonies were home to nearly 2 million humans, including thousands of families with children. They were farmers, miners, and engineers who had left Earth to build better lives on new worlds. They didn't deserve this. "Please," Roberts continued, his image flickering badly now. If anyone receives this message, tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we tried to fight, but we just didn't have enough ships or weapons. Tell our families. We ... double quotes. The transmission cut out completely, leaving only static. The bridge fell silent. Jake stared at the empty screen for a long moment, then turned to his communications officer. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell was a young man with black hair and serious dark eyes who had joined the crew straight from the academy. "Ryan, get me a direct line to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied, his fingers moving quickly over his console. After a few minutes, he looked up with a troubled expression. "Captain, I've got Admiral Carter on the line, but he's not going to like what you're thinking." Admiral Carter's weathered face appeared on the screen. He was an old warrior who had fought in the border wars 20 years earlier, and he understood the realities of military command. His gray hair and lined face showed the weight of difficult decisions. "Jake," Carter said before the captain could speak, "I know why you're calling. We received the same transmission from the colonies. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. Those worlds are 6 days away at maximum speed, and we only have 12 ships in the outer patrol fleet. Intelligence reports show the Zilani have over 1,000 vessels." "Sir," Jake began, but Carter held up his hand. "Son, I know what you're thinking, and I can't let you do it. One ship against their entire fleet would be suicide. Those colonists are brave people, but we can't throw away the lives of your crew on an impossible mission." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He had served under Carter for years and respected the man, but this felt like abandonment. Those colonists were human beings who had trusted Earth to protect them. "Admiral, with respect, those people are counting on us. They're our people, our responsibility. We can't just write them off because the odds are bad." Carter's expression softened slightly. "Jake, I understand how you feel. I really do. But sending one ship against 1,000 is not bravery, it's stupidity. You'd be killed before you could even help anyone." The connection ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He turned to look at his crew, all of whom had heard the conversation. They were good people, all volunteers who had signed up to protect humanity's interests in space. They looked at him expectantly, waiting for his decision. Lisa stepped closer to his chair. "Captain, what are your orders?" Jake thought about the families in those colonies, about children who might already be prisoners on alien ships. He thought about Governor Roberts and his desperate message. He thought about the oath he had taken when he became a starship captain, to protect human lives wherever they might be threatened. "Plot a course for Zilani space," he said quietly. "Sir?" Ryan asked, uncertain he had heard correctly. "You heard me," Jake replied, his voice growing stronger. "Set course for the outer colonies, maximum speed. We're going to get our people back." Lisa moved to her station and began entering the navigation data. "Course laid in, Captain. 6 days to reach the first colony world." Jake stood up and addressed his crew. "I want everyone to understand what we're about to do. We're going up against impossible odds to save people who may already be dead. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship can do so now, no questions asked." Not a single crew member moved. They all knew the risks, but they also knew that sometimes doing the right thing meant ignoring the odds. "All right then," Jake said, settling back into his command chair. "Take us out, Lisa. Let's go show these aliens what happens when they mess with human beings." The used Defiance turned away from Earth and jumped into hyperspace, carrying 48 volunteers toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Crix Vorthek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet of 300 ships surrounded the 3 human colony worlds like a steel net. Each vessel was twice the size of the largest human ship they had encountered, armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect any primitive weapon. The Admiral's aide, Commander Zelch Thornax approached with a data pad in his clawed hands. Thornax was young for a Zilani officer, with bright green scales and eager yellow eyes. He had never seen combat before this mission, but he was excited to witness the Confederation's power in action. "Admiral," Thornax said, his voice filled with respect, "our intelligence division has completed their analysis of human technology. The report confirms what we already suspected." Vorthik took the datapad and scrolled through the information. His 4 eyes scanned the technical details with growing amusement. Human ships were powered by simple fusion reactors, nothing compared to the Confederation's antimatter engines. Their weapons fired metal projectiles and basic energy beams, while Zilani vessels carried weapons that could crack planets in half. "Look at this," Vorthik said, showing the pad to Thornax. "Their largest warship has the firepower of one of our patrol boats. Their armor is made of simple metal alloys. They don't even have proper energy shields." The Admiral walked to the large viewing window that showed the blue-green world of New Denver below. On the planet's surface, human colonists were being loaded onto transport ships for relocation to work camps. The operation was proceeding smoothly, with minimal resistance from the primitive humans. "Sir," called out the communications officer. From his station, we're receiving reports from the other colony worlds. Haven's Rest and Liberty Station have both surrendered without significant fighting. Total human prisoners now number just over 2 million. Vorthik nodded with approval. This was exactly how a proper military operation should work. Overwhelming force, quick victory, minimal casualties on the Confederation side. The humans had learned what every other species eventually discovered. Resistance to the Zilani was pointless. "Admiral," the sensor operator announced, "we have a new contact dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Single vessel, human configuration." Vorthik turned toward the tactical display with interest. A small red dot had appeared. At the system's outer boundary, nearly 6 billion kilometers from the nearest colony world. The ship was tiny compared to his massive fleet, barely showing up on their long-range sensors. "Analysis?" Vorthik asked. The sensor operator worked at his console for several moments before responding. "It appears to be a human destroyer-class vessel, Admiral. Approximately 300 meters long. Crew complement estimated at 40 to 50 beings. Standard human armament and defensive systems." Thornax looked confused. "Sir, why would they send only one ship? Surely they know we have 300 vessels here." Vorthik laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "It's probably a scout ship, sent to confirm our presence before reporting back to Earth. Or perhaps it's carrying a surrender offer from their government." The Admiral studied the tactical display more carefully. The human ship was maintaining position at the edge of the system, making no aggressive moves. It was transmitting standard identification codes and seemed to be scanning the Confederation fleet. "Open a channel to the human vessel," Vorthik ordered. "Let's see what they want." The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the U.S. Defiance. Vorthik saw a human male sitting in the command chair, wearing a blue uniform with gold insignia. The human appeared calm despite being outnumbered 300 to 1, which Vorthik found amusing. "I am Admiral Crix Vorthik of the Zilani Confederation," he announced, his voice carrying authority through the translation system. "You are trespassing in Confederation space. State your business." The human captain looked directly at him with steady blue eyes. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance. I'm here to discuss the release of human prisoners and the withdrawal of your forces from human space." Vorthik blinked all 4 of his eyes in surprise, then began laughing again. The sound spread through his bridge crew, who found the humans' audacity equally entertaining. Commander Thornax was grinning widely, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Captain Morrison," Vorthik said when he stopped laughing, "you seem to be confused about your situation. You have one small ship. I have 300 large ones. Your colonists are now subjects of the Confederation, and these worlds belong to us." Jake Morrison's expression didn't change. "I see the situation clearly, Admiral. The question is whether you do." "Enlighten me," Vorthik said, still amused by the human's confidence. "You've made a mistake," Morrison replied calmly. "You've attacked human beings. That tends to make us angry, and angry humans are dangerous. I'm giving you one chance to correct your mistake." Vorthik's amusement began turning to irritation. This primitive creature was actually trying to threaten him. No species had dared speak to a Zilani admiral with such disrespect in over a century. "Captain Morrison, your species has been classified as Level 2 on the Galactic Development Scale. You have barely mastered interstellar travel. Your weapons technology is centuries behind ours. What exactly do you think one ship can accomplish against my entire fleet?" Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "I think you're about to find out." The human captain gestured to someone off-screen, and suddenly the Defiance began accelerating toward the Confederation fleet. Vorthik watched in amazement as the small ship headed directly for the center of his formation. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "the human vessel is on an intercept course. Current speed increasing rapidly." Vorthik studied the tactical display with growing confusion. The human ship was moving fast, but it was still just one vessel against 300. Even if it somehow managed to damage one or two Confederation ships before being destroyed, it would accomplish nothing meaningful. "Admiral," Commander Thornax said nervously, "should we launch fighters to intercept?" "No," Vorthik replied, his voice filled with contempt. "Let them come. I want the colonists on the planets below to watch as their rescue ship is destroyed. It will teach them the futility of resistance." He opened the communication channel again. "Captain Morrison, you are committing suicide. Turn around now, and I will allow you to return to Earth with news of our victory." Morrison's image appeared on the screen one final time. "Admiral, you've spent so much time conquering primitive species that you've forgotten something important. Sometimes the prey fights back." The channel closed, and the human ship continued its approach. Vorthik ordered his fleet to assume battle formation, though he considered it unnecessary. The humans were about to learn the same lesson that dozens of other species had learned before them. "All ships," Vorthik announced over the fleet communication system, "prepare to engage the human vessel. Use minimum force. I want some debris left for the colonists to see." The Confederation fleet moved into position with practiced efficiency. 300 warships formed a deadly wall of firepower that could obliterate entire planets. Against this overwhelming force, one small human destroyer continued its steady approach. Vorthik felt a moment of almost pity for the brave but foolish humans. Their captain showed courage, even if it was the courage of the ignorant. In a few minutes, it would all be over, and the galaxy would have one less species foolish enough to challenge Zilani supremacy. "Time to weapons range?" Vorthik asked. 8 minutes, Admiral," replied the tactical officer. Vorthik settled back in his command chair to watch the show. This would be a perfect demonstration of Confederation power, recorded and broadcast throughout the galaxy as a warning to any other species considering resistance. He had no idea that in 8 minutes, everything he believed about human beings would be proven catastrophically wrong. Captain Jake Morrison watched the massive alien fleet growing larger on his main screen. 300 warships hung in space like deadly metal sharks, their weapons already turning toward his single destroyer. The bridge of the U.S. Defiance was quiet except for the steady beeping of sensors and the low hum of the engines. Commander Lisa Parker stood at her tactical station, her hands moving quickly over the controls. Her red hair caught the light from the displays as she tracked the enemy ships. "Captain, they're moving into attack formation. We'll be in weapons range in 6 minutes." Jake nodded, his blue eyes never leaving the screen. He had been planning this moment for the entire 6-day journey from Earth. The plan was desperate, maybe even insane, but it was the only chance they had to save the colonists. "Lisa, status on the quantum torpedo?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings carefully. "Chief Rodriguez has it ready, but sir, we've never tested it at full power. The computer models show it could work, but we don't know what will actually happen." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez worked frantically over the special weapon that would either save them or destroy them. Pete was a thin man with graying hair and steady hands that had kept Starship engines running for 20 years. He had taken the experimental quantum torpedo and modified it far beyond its original design. The weapon had been created to destroy large asteroids and space debris, using quantum energy to tear apart molecular bonds. Pete had increased its power by removing every safety system and overloading the quantum core. If his calculations were correct, the explosion would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Captain," Pete's voice came over the communication system, "the torpedo is ready, but I need to warn you one more time. When this thing goes off, we're going to be right in the middle of the blast. Our shields might protect us, but there's no guarantee." Jake pressed the communication button. "Understood, Pete. Just make sure it works." On the bridge of the Dominator, Admiral Vorthek watched the approaching human ship with growing amusement. The small destroyer looked like a toy compared to his massive flagship. His crew was relaxed and confident, treating this more like a training exercise than a real battle. "Admiral," Commander Thornax reported, "the human vessel will be in optimal firing range in 4 minutes. Should we begin the attack?" Vorthek waved one of his clawed hands dismissively. "Not yet. Let them get closer. I want to see what they think they can accomplish with their primitive weapons." The Admiral turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet. Record everything that happens here. I want this footage sent to every species in the galaxy as a demonstration of what happens when you challenge the Confederation." Meanwhile, Jake was making final preparations for his desperate plan. He turned to his communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell. "Ryan, I need you to send a message to all the colony worlds. Make sure every human down there can hear it." "Yes, sir," Ryan replied, opening channels to the 3 occupied planets. Jake stood up from his command chair and faced the main screen. His voice was calm and clear as he spoke to the millions of humans listening on the worlds below. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the U.S. Defiance. I know you're scared, and I know things look hopeless right now. But I want you to remember something. We're human beings, and human beings don't give up. We don't abandon our own, and we don't surrender to bullies. Today, these aliens are going to learn why you never corner a human with nothing to lose." The message was also heard on the Zilani ships, and Admiral Vorthek laughed loudly. "Did you hear that? He thinks he's going to teach us a lesson. This primitive species has no idea what real power looks like." Jake sat back down and looked at his crew. They were all volunteers who had chosen to follow him on this mission, knowing they would probably die. But they were ready to sacrifice everything for their fellow humans. "Lisa, arm the quantum torpedo," Jake ordered. "Torpedo armed, Captain," Lisa replied, her voice steady despite the danger they were facing. "Pete, is the engine room ready for maximum power?" "Ready, Captain," came Pete's voice from below. Jake took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "All hands, prepare for combat. This is going to get rough." The U.S. Defiance accelerated toward the center of the Zilani fleet at maximum speed. The alien ships began moving to surround the small human vessel, like wolves closing in on a lone deer. Their weapons powered up, ready to tear the destroyer apart. Admiral Vorthek leaned forward in his command chair, eager to watch the destruction of the human ship. "All vessels, prepare to fire on my command." I want them disabled first, so we can capture the crew alive. They might provide useful information about human military capabilities. The distance between the fleets closed rapidly. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Admiral, the tactical officer called out, the human ship is not slowing down. They're heading directly for our formation center. Vorthik frowned. This wasn't normal behavior for a species trying to attack. Usually, enemy ships would try to stay at long range and pick off individual vessels. But the humans were charging straight into the middle of this fleet. Sir, Commander Thornax said nervously, what if it's some kind of suicide attack? Impossible, Vorthik replied. One ship, even if it's self-destructed, couldn't seriously damage our fleet. Their weapons aren't powerful enough. On the Defiance, alarms were sounding as the Zelani ships opened fire. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked through space. But Jake's ship was moving too fast and changing direction too quickly for the aliens to get a solid hit. Shields at 60%, Lisa reported as near misses sent shockwaves through the ship. Almost there, Jake said, watching the distance counter on his screen. Pete, give me everything the engines have got. The Defiance shot forward with a burst of speed that surprised the Zelani gunners. The small ship weaved between the larger alien vessels, heading for the exact center of their formation where Admiral Vorthik's flagship waited. Now what are they doing? Vorthik wondered aloud as the human ship approached his position. Jake waited until the last possible second, until his ship was surrounded by enemy vessels on all sides. The Zelani fleet was packed tightly together, confident in their overwhelming numbers. It was exactly what Jake had hoped for. Lisa, fire the quantum torpedo, Jake ordered. Torpedo away, Lisa replied. The quantum torpedo streaked from the Defiance toward the nearest Zelani ship, traveling at incredible speed. But instead of hitting the alien vessel, it detonated in the empty space between the closely packed enemy ships. The explosion that followed was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The quantum energy tore through the fabric of space itself, creating a chain reaction that spread outward in all directions. The blast didn't just destroy the Zelani ships, it unraveled them at the molecular level, turning metal and energy into pure quantum foam. Admiral Vorthik had one moment to realize what was happening before the quantum wave reached his flagship. His last thought was that he had completely underestimated these humans. The explosion consumed dozens of Zelani ships instantly, and the quantum shockwave damaged or destroyed dozens more. The carefully organized alien fleet was torn apart in seconds, reduced to scattered debris and emergency signals. When the blast finally faded, the used Defiance was still there, her shields barely holding, but her crew alive. Around them, the wreckage of the once mighty Confederation fleet drifted in space like broken toys. Jake looked at the tactical display, hardly believing what he saw. They had done it. One human ship had shattered an entire alien fleet with a single weapon. The impossible had become reality. Captain, Lisa said, her voice filled with amazement. Sensors show 37 enemy ships completely destroyed, and another 68 severely damaged. The rest of their fleet is scattered and trying to retreat. Jake smiled grimly. The Zelani Confederation had learned a hard lesson about underestimating human determination. But the battle wasn't over yet. The wreckage of Admiral Vorthik's flagship drifted through space. Its hull cracked open like a broken egg. Emergency lights flickered inside the damaged vessel as surviving crew members struggled to restore basic systems. The Admiral himself was trapped under a fallen beam, his green blood staining the deck around him. Commander Thornax crawled through the debris, his uniform torn and his scales blackened by smoke. He reached his commander and tried to lift the heavy metal beam, but it was too heavy for his injured arms. "Admiral," Thornax gasped, "can you hear me?" Vorthik's 4 eyes opened slowly, 2 of them clouded with pain. "Status report," he whispered. Through damaged vocal cords. Sir, the fleet is scattered. We've lost contact with most of our ships. The ones still responding are reporting massive damage. The humans somehow created a weapon that tears through our shields like paper. Vorthok tried to move but cried out in pain. His left arm was clearly broken, and something was wrong with his breathing. How many ships do we still have? Thornax checked his portable scanner with shaking hands. Maybe 150, sir. But most of them are damaged. Some are trying to retreat to the outer system. Others are just drifting without power. The Admiral closed his eyes, trying to understand what had happened. In 300 years of Confederation expansion, no enemy had ever inflicted such damage on a Zilani fleet. The humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, easily conquered. Instead, they had turned his mighty armada into floating scrap metal. Sir, Thornax continued, what are your orders? Should we try to regroup? Before Vorthok could answer, the communication system crackled to life. Captain Morrison's voice filled the damaged bridge, calm and determined. Attention surviving Zilani vessels. This is Captain Morrison of the U.S. Defiance. Your fleet is broken and your admiral is defeated. I'm offering you one chance to surrender and withdraw from human space. Vorthok struggled to reach his communication controls, anger giving him strength despite his injuries. Never, he snarled into the microphone. The Confederation does not surrender to primitives. Then you'll share the fate of your destroyed ships, Morrison replied coldly. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display showing the scattered enemy fleet. His ship had survived the quantum explosion, but the shields were down to 20% and several systems were damaged. Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez was working frantically to restore full power. Commander Lisa Parker monitored the enemy ships from her station. Captain, they're trying to reform their battle lines, but they're having trouble with communications. The quantum blast disrupted their command network. Good, Jake said. That gives us an advantage. Ryan, what's the status of our colonists on the planets? Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell worked at his console, filtering through dozens of transmissions from the 3 colony worlds. Sir, the colonists are fighting back. When they saw what happened to the alien fleet, they started attacking the ground forces. The Zilani troops are retreating to their landing sites. Jake nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The aliens had expected passive resistance from frightened humans, but instead they were facing organized rebellion from people who refused to give up their freedom. Captain, Lisa called out. Enemy ship approaching from starboard. It's damaged but still has weapons. Jake turned to see a Zilani cruiser limping toward them, its hull scarred by the quantum blast but its plasma cannon still functioning. The alien ship was smaller than Admiral Vorthok's flagship, but still twice the size of the Defiance. They want another fight, Jake said grimly. Lisa, target their engines. Let's show them we're not finished yet. The U.S. Defiance turned to face the approaching enemy vessel. The human destroyer was damaged but still deadly, like a wounded wolf that had tasted blood. Jake's crew worked with practiced efficiency, their earlier victory giving them confidence. The Zilani cruiser fired first, sending a stream of plasma bolts toward the human ship. But Jake had learned to read alien tactics during the battle, and he ordered evasive maneuvers just in time. The Defiance rolled away from the attack, her own weapons returning fire. Human railgun projectiles struck the cruiser's damaged hull, punching through weakened armor plating. The alien ship shuddered under the impact, venting atmosphere and debris. Into space, their shields are down, Lisa reported. One more hit should finish them. But before Jake could give the order to fire again, the Zilani cruiser suddenly turned away and accelerated toward the edge of the system. The alien captain had decided that discretion was better than destruction. Let them go, Jake ordered. We need to focus on the bigger picture. The battle for the colony worlds was spreading beyond space. On New Denver, Governor Paul Roberts had organized the remaining colonists into resistance groups. They used mining equipment and construction tools as weapons, attacking the Zilani ground forces from hidden positions. The aliens had expected to face farmers and engineers, not determined fighters who knew every cave and valley on their planet. The Zilani troops were trained for conventional warfare, not guerrilla fighting, against people defending their homes. Similar battles were raging on Haven's Rest and Liberty Station. Human colonists who had been prisoners just hours before were now free and fighting back. They sabotaged alien equipment, rescued fellow prisoners, and made life miserable for the occupation forces. Back in space, more Zilani ships were trying to escape the system. Some were so badly damaged they could barely maintain life support. Others had lost their commanders and were being run by junior officers who had never faced a real battle. Jake watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet continued to fall apart. What had started as an organized military formation was now a scattered collection of damaged ships trying to survive. The Confederation's reputation for invincibility was being destroyed along with their vessels. "Captain," Ryan reported, "I'm receiving surrender signals from 12 enemy ships. They're requesting permission to leave the system." Jake considered this carefully. Part of him wanted to destroy every alien ship in revenge for the attack on the colonies. But he also knew that showing mercy might prevent future conflicts. "Tell them they can leave," Jake decided, "but they take nothing with them. No prisoners, no stolen resources, nothing." And they broadcast a message to their government explaining what happened here. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied, opening communication channels to the surrendering ships. Admiral Vorthik, still trapped in the wreckage of his flagship, listened to the surrender negotiations with growing despair. His career was over, his fleet was destroyed, and his reputation would never recover. Worse, the humans had proven that the Confederation was not invincible. "Commander Thornax," he said weakly, "send a message to the High Command on Zilani Prime. Tell them that humanity is not a primitive species. Tell them that these humans are dangerous, and that the Confederation should avoid their space." Thornax nodded, though he wasn't sure if anyone would believe the message. The High Command had always assumed that superior technology guaranteed victory. They had never faced an enemy that combined advanced weapons with the desperate courage of people fighting for their freedom. As more Zilani ships fled the system, Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had done the impossible. One human ship had defeated an entire alien fleet and saved 2 million colonists from slavery, but he also knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy, and humanity would face new challenges as other species decided whether humans were potential allies or threats that needed to be eliminated. "Lisa," Jake said, "start working on a full battle report. Earth Command needs to know exactly what we used and how we used it. Other human ships might need this information." "Already on it, Captain," Lisa replied. The battle was won, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. 6 months after the battle at New Denver, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The news of humanity's victory had spread through every star system, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees from the shattered Zilani fleet. The species that everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers were now the subject of intense discussion in council chambers across known space. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from a dozen different species arrive for the first Galactic Peace Conference. The station orbited Earth's moon, a massive construction of metal and glass that served as humanity's gateway to the galaxy. The conference had been Jake's idea, supported by Earth's government and requested by several alien species who wanted to establish formal relations with humanity. The old system of Zilani domination was broken, and everyone was trying to figure out what would replace it. Commander Lisa Parker, Now Captain Parker joined Jake at the viewing window. She wore the gold insignia of a starship commander, having been given her own vessel to lead humanity's new exploration fleet. Her red hair was longer now, and her green eyes held the confidence that came from surviving impossible odds. "The Altarian delegation just arrived," she reported. "That makes 9 species confirmed for the conference." The Zentharis sent a message, saying they're still considering whether to attend. Jake nodded, watching a sleek alien ship dock with the station. The Altarians were a peaceful species that had been conquered by the Zilani 50 years earlier. They had regained their independence after the Confederation's fleet was destroyed, and they wanted to thank humanity personally. "What about the Zilani?" Jake asked. "Their new government sent an official apology and a request for a non-aggression treaty," Lisa replied. Admiral Vorthik was court-martialed and removed from command. "The Confederation is calling itself the Zilani Republic now, and they're releasing all their slave species." Jake smiled at that news. The battle at New Denver had done more than save human colonies. It had freed dozens of species from Zilani rule. The ripple effects of that single fight were still spreading across the galaxy. Dr. Patricia Wells, Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community, approached them with a data pad in her hands. She was a diplomatic expert who had spent her career studying alien cultures, preparing for the day when humanity would need to negotiate with other species. "Admiral Morrison," she said, "the conference delegates want to meet with you personally. They're calling you the man who changed the galaxy." Jake felt uncomfortable with that title. He had been a starship captain doing his duty to protect human lives. The fact that his actions had reshaped galactic politics was never part of his plan. "I'm just a soldier, Dr. Wells," he said. "You're the diplomat. You should be the one talking to them. They want to hear from the person who proved that the Zilani could be defeated," Wells replied. "Your name carries weight now. Use it to help humanity build a better future." Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Denver, Governor Paul Roberts walked through the rebuilt capital city with a sense of pride and accomplishment. The Zilani occupation had lasted only a few days, but the damage had been significant. Now, 6 months later, the colony was stronger than ever. The main street was lined with new buildings constructed from local materials and human engineering. The population had actually grown since the liberation, as refugees from other worlds came to live in the system that had successfully resisted alien conquest. "Governor," called out Maria Santos, the colony's head of security, "we just received word from the other colonies. Haven's Rest and Liberty Station both want to establish a mutual defense agreement. They're proposing a united colonial government." Roberts considered this proposal carefully. The 3 colonies had shared the experience of invasion and liberation. It made sense for them to work together to prevent future attacks. "Set up a meeting," he decided. "If we're going to be humanity's frontier, we need to be strong enough to defend ourselves." Back on Earth, the Galactic Peace Conference was about to begin. Representatives from 11 different species gathered in the main conference room, a circular chamber designed to give no single delegation a position of advantage. Admiral Morrison entered the room and was surprised by the reaction. The alien delegate stood up as he walked to the human section, a sign of respect that was rarely given to members of other species. Jake realized that his reputation had grown far beyond what he was comfortable with. The Altarian delegate, a tall being with blue skin and large silver eyes, spoke first. "Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the free worlds of the Altarian Republic, we thank you for returning our independence to us." Similar statements came from other delegates. The Vegan Trade Union, the Crystalline Collective, and half a dozen other species all expressed gratitude for humanity's role in ending Zilani domination. Jake stood up to address the assembly. "I appreciate your words, but I want to make something clear. The battle at New Denver wasn't fought to free other species or change galactic politics. It was fought to protect human lives. The fact that it had larger consequences was just a side effect. Perhaps, said the crystalline delegate, a being that looked like living gemstone. But the results are the same. You have shown that no species has the right to dominate others through force. The conference continued for 3 days, establishing new trade agreements, defense pacts, and diplomatic protocols. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around principles of cooperation rather than conquest, and humanity found itself at the center of these changes that Dr. Wells proved to be an excellent negotiator, helping to resolve disputes between species that had been enemies under Zilani rule. The humans were seen as neutral parties who could be trusted to mediate conflicts fairly. On the final day of the conference, Jake received an unexpected visitor. Commander Thornax, the former Zilani officer who had survived the destruction of Admiral Vorthic's flagship, requested a private meeting. The alien looked different than he had during the battle. His bright green scales had dulled, and his yellow eyes showed the weight of recent experiences. He wore the simple gray uniform of the new Zilani Republic rather than the elaborate military dress of the old Confederation. Admiral Morrison, Thornax said, his voice humble, I come to offer my apologies for the crimes committed by my people against yours. Jake studied the young Zilani officer carefully. Are you here officially, or is this personal? Both, Thornax replied. The Republic has sent me to negotiate a formal peace treaty. But personally, I wanted to understand how you knew we could be defeated when everyone else thought we were invincible. Jake considered the question for a long moment. Your people made the same mistake that every bully makes. You assumed that strength was just about having bigger weapons and more ships. But real strength comes from having something worth fighting. For the colonists, Thornax said, understanding. That's right. When you threaten someone's family, their home, their freedom, you don't create fear. You create determination. And determined humans are the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Thornax nodded slowly. My people are learning this lesson. The Republic is trying to build relationships based on cooperation rather than conquest. We hope that humanity will give us a chance to prove we have changed. Jake shook the alien's hand, noting how the gesture of human friendship seemed to surprise. Thornax, everyone deserves a second chance, Commander. Just remember what happens when humans are backed into a corner. As the conference ended and the alien delegates returned to their home worlds, Jake reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been an unknown species on the edge of galactic civilization. Now they were respected members of the galactic community, with allies and trading partners throughout known space. The U's Defiance had been repaired and upgraded, serving as the flagship of humanity's new deep space fleet. Other ships were being built using lessons learned from the battle at New Denver, equipped with improved quantum weapons and better defensive systems. Jake knew that new challenges would come. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity would face other threats in the future. But they had proven something important at New Denver, that human determination, courage, and ingenuity could overcome any odds. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human leadership in the galaxy had just begun.